What's going on, gang, and welcome back to another episode of Scared of Normal. I'm sitting down with Sean and James, and what are we talking about today?
Yeah. Episode 4?
Yeah, technically 4, I think.
Yes, we got done diving into my life, and I'm excited to get back into yours.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
next 3 hours.
When he says get back in, I gotta admit, I messed up last time, guys. We've done this episode once already, and we got done recording it, and I sat down to start editing it, and I started listening to it back, and there was no voice from Sean, and I forgot to turn his microphone on. So
everyone's like, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said when I heard about it. I was like, oh, that's cool, no worries.
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe we can salvage this, and then there was just so much dead space, and I was like, well, it doesn't match up with the video, so here we are again doing it round 2. So, you know, they usually say third time's the charm, but we're gonna make it the second time this go around.
2 times makes it true.
That's
true.
There
we go. And also, you can like not say some of the stuff that you were embarrassed about saying last time.
Oh, we're gonna get more embarrassing this time.
Shit.
I said way too many times. But all right, let's get into it.
All right,
So,
let's go.
Mike Murfitt. What's your middle name?
John.
John.
Yeah, love that for me.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Have the same exact name as my dad. So
there you
Junior.
go.
What's your birthday?
June 27th.
Same as me.
92, baby.
91 over here.
Grommet.
Yeah, where should we start?
I want to start about knowing where you were born, where like some of the younger years.
Yeah, so we're in Longmont, Colorado right now. And from where we sit, I was born like 3 miles away from here in Longmont.
So nuts.
Longmont Hospital. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about that. Like growing up here, hated this town, hated Colorado, but I've come to love it, as everybody else who's moved here over the last few years is loving it too. But yeah, I'm fortunate to have been born here. You know what I mean? Like grew up here in Longmont, and yeah, I don't know. It's cool to see how much has changed since I was born here.
Yeah. So what are some of the memories of the younger years, like knocking about in Longmont? What was it like? What were the vibes? Where did you hang out?
Yeah. So my grandpa owned a business owns a business on Main Street. It's over 50 years old now. So I grew up basically inside of his store. My dad worked there too, and this is my mom's dad that owned the store. So we lived in Johnstown, which is like northeast of Longmont, like 30-ish minutes, but was in the store all the time just because my whole family was there. So just kind of like running up and down Main Street as a kid, you know, like there's a Winchell's donut shop down the road from my grandpa's store, and like every Saturday he'd give me like $10, and I would just walk down there with my $10 and like go get a dozen donuts and walk back. Like I was like 5 years old doing that, you know.
I was about to say, yeah, grew up on Main Street. Just like,
It's
what
bizarre.
was it like, let's say late 90s?
Not great.
Yeah.
You know, like it was pretty run down, like a lot of like really like hole in the wall type bars and like pawn shops, and just like not what it is now.
Yeah, it's the spot now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I remember so I was like really discouraged on Colorado and Longmont, and like I remember the first time walking down Main Street and hearing live music, and I was just like, whoa, what is going on here? Like, because it was such like, I wouldn't say like a dumpy area, but it just wasn't like a place where like a lot of cool things were going on.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, it's for the viewers and for the listeners, it's a super quaint kind of downtown area, beautiful little architecture, nice landscaping. I think it's a dreamy little town.
Yeah, it's a little utopia, you know?
is.
It's like, it's kind of crazy to think like growing up here, like where one of the breweries we frequent, it's 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙈𝘼𝙇. We were just talking about them earlier. We just had beers there yesterday, but 𝙎𝘼𝘼𝙍𝘼 Brewing, and across the street where those beautiful apartments are used to be a turkey processing plant.
Oh,
And like,
Sean loves that.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me.
Dude.
It's gone now.
But like I just remember being a kid, like driving past there, and like where 𝙎𝘼𝘼𝑍 is, like that's where they would park the trucks with all the turkeys. So like the overhang where you sit outside at 𝙎𝘼𝘼𝑍,
Yeah.
like there's like a big like gondola. That's where they'd back the trucks in, and you'd see all the little turkeys in there.
So funny.
Isn't that so
Yeah.
gnarly? And like now nobody knows that,
Yeah.
but like it's crazy to see that change, and like seeing people outside enjoying like this cool little town that we're fortunate enough to be in. So yeah.
All right, so you're growing up. Obviously, you want to get out of your hometown. Some of your best friends are moving to California. You're growing up BMX, and
I wasn't even riding yet. Yeah.
Oh, you're.
I mean,
this is young.
I got into
Yeah.
it super late. So like, yeah, I mean, formative years, like as a kid, like bikes, like I always rode bikes,
Yeah.
but like never like seriously, you know, like we had like a little jump off the curb or whatever. But yeah, I grew up just playing like t-ball, and wrestling was like the big one. So it went to state and all that stuff. Like
Did your dad
multiple
wrestle a
years.
bit?
Yeah. So my dad was like, I believe he had an opportunity as like a full ride to go to school for it.
No way.
But he just didn't do that. He like had a really good job and just decided to pursue that route. But yeah, so he got me into it super heavy, and he was super passionate about it, and he was super good. So he knew what to do, right? And like, I wouldn't say I was ever amazing at wrestling. Like, it was never my favorite thing, but it was cool to like be doing something with your dad. As a kid, you kind of just do what you do because your parents do it, you know? And I think I was 6 or 7 and my parents got divorced. And so that like was one of those things where it's like, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know how to process that stuff. And so going to wrestling practice with my dad, but living with my mom, it like kind of created a riff. And I was just like, I'm done doing this.
Yeah.
I think I was like 8 years old. And I just remember like my dad got on to me at wrestling practice or something. And I just remember like where we lived in Johnstown was like maybe, I don't know, half a mile from the high school. And that's where like wrestling practice was. And so I just like ran out of the gym one night and just ran home. I was like 8 years old. I just remember it being so cold, like running home and being like, I'm done. I never want to do this again. And that was like history for wrestling and like team sports for me. And like, I didn't really do anything from 8 years old to like, I think I started riding BMX at 12. So yeah, I just like turned into a fat little kid.
It's funny. I thought I got a late start. Same thing. 8 years old. Team sports like fried me, and I got into BMX. But yeah, so you just kind of chilled for a bit.
It was like video games and like drinking soda and eating pizza for me. You know, like that's how it was. Yeah, I just
living the dream,
dude. Totally. Like
this.
Played a lot of Grand Theft Auto. Like that was kind of my thing. Like I remember being in like 3rd grade and my teacher being like, "You played Grand Theft Auto?" Like now, like when I think about how young I was doing that, like my parents had no idea what game I was playing. You know, but like. Yeah, that was kind of my thing, and like kind of got overweight, and like, but was still at the same time like riding bikes around my neighborhood with all my friends, like having fun, and I always loved that, but I didn't know that there was more.
Were you like jumping? Were you hitting dirt jumps, or is it more of just like kind of curb hits?
Like curb hits, and like I remember like I always had like a Next BMX bike that had like 4 pegs, so I'd always like stand on the back pegs and ride down the street, like doing the no hand thing, like thinking I was like the shit.
Yeah. That's a Walmart brand, right? Like the Next bikes.
Oh yeah, but I always had like the cleanest ones, dude. Like I loved those bikes. All the bolts for sure were stripped out. Loved that. Yeah, and I remember I think it was probably 3rd, maybe 4th or 5th grade. It was elementary years. And there was a kid that I was friends with, and we were walking to lunch. I remember it so vividly. We're like walking in the cafeteria, and he was saying that he was traveling, or he'd just gotten done traveling for a BMX race. And I was like, I ride BMX. And he was like, no, you don't ride BMX kind of thing. And like at the time I didn't know anything about it or how badass he actually was. And I remember going home and telling my dad like, hey, this kid I know, Brian, he races BMX. And my dad's like, well, and my dad at the time was living in Firestone, which is just east of Longmont a little bit. And he was like, there's a BMX track right down the street from our house. Like, next time you're over for the weekend, like, we can go. I'm like, okay. So I go back to school, and this kid that told me this is still a good friend of mine today. His name's Brian Bott. And turns out, like, you know, getting into BMX a little later on, I find out, like, he was getting out of it as I, like, started getting serious into it. But he was a national age group #1 rider. So he was, like, all-time badass, like, NAG 1.
Yeah.
And, like, had no clue, you know? And, like all the people that I became friends with that were incredibly good riders all knew who he was, and they were friends with him. And like, yeah, it was just crazy. Like, that was the dude who like changed my life, really, just because he was like, yeah, I race BMX. Yeah.
So going back to like your dad saying that you got that track down the road, do you remember the first time attending the track? Or
Oh yeah. So I tell my dad that, and like, you know, I just have these like crappy BMX bikes. Like they were nice, but they're like Walmart brand bikes. And so before we even go to the track the first time, my dad, I believe he traded a shotgun or a rifle or something to somebody that he was working with at the time for a 𝙎𝘼𝙍𝙍𝙈 F5 Freestyle BMX bike. And like those bikes in that era were like tanks, you know, like big, like 3-piece cranks that are like as big as like a Red Bull can around, like just so overbuilt, 48 spokes. But I was stoked. I had a real BMX bike. I had a 𝙎𝘼𝙍𝙍. Like that was so crazy to me. And we drive over to the BMX track, and I just remember like coming around the corner and seeing like all the doubles and the tables and the rhythm section, and just being like, this is real. Like anybody can just be here. This is real. Because like at the time, like now in Colorado, we're so fortunate because we have bike parks and we have skate parks everywhere, but we didn't have much of that. So I'd never seen that. And like, so I like get my, like, I don't even think I had a helmet, honestly, like start pushing my bike up the starting hill, and like mind blown, you know, you crest that starting hill and just look over at all this, like it's a playground, you know. And that day there was the guy who ended up being like a mentor and a coach for me. His name was 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙍𝙍, and he was there with his two kids, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝘍𝙍 and Chris Stallman. And these were like the local fast kids. Like they were, and on a national level, insanely fast too. So Jordan, I think at the time was like 7 or 8 years old, and he was jumping the biggest jumps at the track.
And how old were you at the time?
12.
Okay.
Maybe late 11, but probably 12. And I just remember like, I was like almost feeling like inferior, you know, because I'm like, I'm so much older than you, and like, what is, like, this is insane. And like, I couldn't even pump, you know, like you're going over these jumps and just like can't even keep the front end down. You're just like getting bucked, you know. And so I'm like just enamored by what's going on out there. And yeah, I was hooked from that second forward. It was like, that's all I could think about. And so I think that was probably maybe a weekend, maybe, I don't know exactly when in the week it was, but I remember that following race day, which was a Saturday, like we went and I like got the temporary membership, which is good for like 3 races, and got a paper plate and wrote my temporary number on there, and started racing BMX.
Damn, that's soon.
Yeah, it just happened for me, man. Yeah, it just clicked, you know. I was like, this is what I want to do. And
so how was the journey from there? So that's your first race. Where do we see you go with BMX? Because obviously you were not a BMX racer now.
Yeah, I mean, I started like understanding like kind of what I wanted to do, I guess, with life from an early age. I was like, the first thing I was like truly passionate about. And I always feel fortunate that like that happened so early on. And I didn't even know at the time how passionate I really was, but that's all I could think about. So yeah, start racing BMX as like novice class with all these local fast guys. And I'm like looking around at all the people I'm with. I'm like, these guys are fast. So I just start doing the laps. And within the first year of racing BMX, I went from novice to expert. And I remember that 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝘍𝙍𝙍 guy just being like, kind of thrown off, or like how profound it was that I came up through the ranks that quick. And like, but it's because I was standing around watching all these kids that were so freaking fast, and like most of them younger than me, being like, dude, I want to be able to jump that double. How do I figure that out? So I just started, you know, doing the laps. Like everybody would be having fun sessioning one part of the track, and I would just be doing full laps nonstop. And yeah, I remember turning expert, and that day Sid came up to me and he was like, hey, your nickname is the Workman because you work harder than anybody out here.
So cool.
Yeah, and like I think that was a cool thing to like learn about myself at that age. It's like I wasn't really thinking about doing the work. I just wanted to get to the end of, you know, it's like the work has to be done, so it's going to get done.
How many days a week were you going? Because you're pretty close to that track, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I was still living in Johnstown.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe 2 days. I think there was like Wednesday practice and Saturday race.
Yeah.
So I didn't like get a ton of time because all the other kids lived in like that area. So they were getting to go all the time. And so the days that I did get to go there, I was just making it count, you know. And I hadn't like discovered skate parks or anything like that yet. So like I would just like, you know, as I turn expert, like they start talking about training and Sid's talking about doing sprints. So I would just be doing like stair steps in my backyard or like sprinting on my BMX bike down the street, like just trying to like, so for the next race I could like be as fast as that guy.
Were you still on the Harrow 48 spoke?
I think pretty quick I bought a BMX bike. There's a bike shop here in Longmont. I think it was called like High Gear Cyclery or something like that. And it's next to the donut shop I used to walk down to, which is kind of funny. And I bought my own first BMX bike there, and it was a free agent. And my dad was pissed, dude, because like I just like went in there and bought it and like brought this bike back, and he's like, dude, you don't even know what you were looking for. You just bought a bike. Like I wasn't looking at top tube length. It like had 1-piece cranks. Like it was a solid bike. It just needed like some upgraded parts on it. So he starts helping me like upgrade the parts, and like at this point, this is probably right before I did turn expert. So we get that bike dialed in. And yeah, I was like, I want a real BMX bike now. And like I'm hanging with all these fast guys. And I start figuring out like how to jump and how to manual, and like start unlocking like these little skills, and like, okay, like BMX is cool. Like I'm hanging with all the fast guys. I'm a fast guy now. Where do we go now? You know?
Well, yeah. And what do you think? I mean, I don't want to jump around too much, but with regards to having that work ethic, like obviously if you nickname the workman and you're out there and you're like, well, I know I'm going to want to be the fast guy or one of the fast guys. So this is just the work. That was just a natural thing, or was that instilled in you from a young age?
I think the work ethic was like instilled from a young age, like growing up in my grandpa's store. Like he came from a family of 9 in southern Georgia. Like his family was sharecroppers. So like watching, like being in the environment of him, like telling those stories and like how they didn't have shoes growing up and like how like rough their life was. Like, you know, they picked cotton and peanuts. That's how they made their living. And so to see like the livelihood that he built from coming from that was really cool. And I think I probably picked up a lot of that from him. And like up until that point, I didn't really know how to apply myself to anything. Like I never really enjoyed school. I remember my teachers always telling my parents, like, if he could just apply himself, he could be great, you know, like
right.
The worst thing. Like I still think about those teachers today. And I'm like, well, you didn't get me excited.
Right.
Like, I wasn't not applying myself for any reason. You just like were a bad teacher. You didn't care, you know? And so, yeah, it was
shout out to your old teachers who are probably listening to this right now.
Shout out.
Fun to like run into some teachers.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know. I think about that a lot, where it's just like, I remember some of those teachers in that age, like I'm in middle school at this point. Like some of those teachers were just so mean, dude. Like, and like, you know, you're trying to figure out who you are at that age. And then finally I'm like finding this BMX thing, and like that at the time, like that's so much more accepted now, but like nobody understood what that was then, you know, like, I don't know.
Drawing, I was the same in school. Like I got told like if I would just apply myself and stop staring out the windows and then drawing like the doubles on your page.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'd always like, and I used to just get down. I was like, oh yeah, I could, oh, look at that thing go. Sorry for the listeners. I was just drawing a double on my paper right then.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That was like the crazy thing that was like figuring out like, oh, like, and I was never like, I'm not a talented bike rider. I'm not like, I just wanted to, like, I figured it out because I worked hard. And that was like always the hard thing for me too, is like I started to really understand that like saying of like, you know, hard work beats talent every time, because the guys I was racing were talented and they really locally didn't have any other competition. And then here comes this kid on like a clapped out bike who's just like relentless, not giving up. And like, yeah, I like started to see that really quick. I'm like, if I show up when other people are just messing around, like I can be better than them. And so like, yeah, it all started kind of clicking.
Yeah, and was it just to be as fast as the track kids, or was in your brain to be like, I want to be a AA pro?
It was just the track kids, because like I didn't really have perspective on that yet.
Totally.
And like, and then I started like understanding that it could be bigger than that, right? Like I'm fortunate.
Around like 15?
It was probably like 13, 14.
Yeah.
Like, because it happened pretty quick. And like, you know, we were fortunate because we had 𝙉𝘾𝘼 at our local track, and 𝙉𝘾𝘼 is an Olympian for BMX racing.
Yep.
So getting to grow up around him and Deke Brown, like these fast guys that were racing nationals and doing well and like making a living at it, it was like, oh, you can do that?
Yep.
And I don't think it really set in until like I went to my first national, and like seeing like, you know, you're at a local race and there's like 20 motos or whatever, and it's like there's a good amount of people there, but it's not a packed house.
ABA or MBL?
ABA.
Where at?
Kearney, Nebraska.
Oof.
So yeah, that was like crazy, you know, like going to Kearney, Nebraska, like traveling to go ride a bike.
Yep.
Like up until this point, like we travel for like, you know, go see family or like Christmas vacation or whatever it was, but like never to like play a sport.
You got the bike in the back.
Yeah.
You and your dad.
Yeah, I mean,
rolling.
I think the whole family went to that one. So
Really?
my dad, my stepmom, Christy, I think my sisters were there. And then all of our friends from the local track, like Sid and Chris and Jordan and like all the guys I'm racing, like go to this national in Nebraska. So I'm like in a different state. I'm here with my bike, and I'm here with all my friends that I like to ride my bike with.
All the best bike riders in the world.
Oh yeah, you
Show
walk
up.
in there and it's just like, it changes. You know, you go from being like that fast guy at the local track to being like, there's everybody here is the fast guy at their local track.
Oh yeah.
So
do you remember the feeling? Was it intimidation? Was it excitement? Like what was your vibes going into this new world and seeing all these guys you didn't know as well?
It was super intimidating because like racing BMX, when you go to nationals, like practice, like they do like age ranges. And And like I'd never been to that, and it's like a cow corral, dude. You're like
It's
elbowing
exactly,
through, like, and if you're not like holding your line, people are getting in your way, like, because they're trying to get the practice time.
Oh, yeah.
You get like 30 minutes of practice, and there's like 200 riders.
Dude, you're elbow to elbow, and someone will just like literally just stick
Slide
up and
by.
just like jam their bars.
So you're
in front
like
of you.
making your own lines as you're walking up the backside of the
there's
start
like there's
ramp, right?
8 gates, right? So
Right.
everybody's kind of lining up behind the gate that they want to practice. So like what you would try to do is like start in gate 1 and get enough laps to work your way all the way over to gate 8. So you had every line on the first straight figured out. But like everybody was doing that, so you're kind of just like in a boxing match trying to get up to the front, and like, and then like my gate style. So there's like a couple different ways you can do a start gate, and there's like the power forward, which is like you're just pushing forward to get out of the gate, like throwing all of your body weight forward. I was never good at that, and Jordan, the kid that I was talking about first thing at the track, he slingshotted, so he'd like roll back 6 inches and then slam forward. And so that gate style was really tough when there's that many people, because everybody's pushing up behind you.
Yeah.
So you'll like snap back and you'll hit somebody's tire. So you'd always have to be like, hey, I slingshot, get off my tire. But the gate's going so fast. It's just like this, like, it's chaotic, dude.
That was more stressful for me than the actual races. I felt like was practice.
Totally. Or just like even getting in the gate, and like everybody's like fucking with your head. Like, I'll never forget like my first expert gate. Like I was sitting there and like telling the guy behind me, I'm like, yo, back off my wheel. I slingshot. The dude sitting next to me is like rocking on the gate. Like the guy next to him is like pedaling backwards the whole time. And it's just like doing these little things to mess with people. But yeah, like being the first time going to something like that, I was just like, dude, I've never ridden a bike before. What is going on here? Like it was so foreign.
So what's the next milestone that you can remember? So obviously that was your first national,
Yep.
right? And then so from there, what was the next thing that really reminds you of your passion, your love for BMX?
I don't know if it's necessarily passion, but I think the next milestone was like breaking my first bone and my first concussion. You know what I mean? Like,
Let's go into that one. That
yeah,
sounds good.
because like I had fallen down before, like, you know, like riding around in the street or whatever, and like got scars and like pretty gnarly stuff. But I'd never broken a bone or like been knocked out cold. And like, I think I was 13. I can't remember exactly my age. It's like kind of all run together, 13 or 14. But my mom had just gotten remarried remarried, got married to my stepdad, Tony. And they were having a wedding reception. And it was a state qualifier at 𝙎𝘾𝘼 BMX, so my local track. And I was coming across the last straight, and I caught elbows with somebody, and it like threw me up and flipped.
Wait, they were having the wedding reception at the BMX
No,
race?
so that comes later this night.
Okay, good,
sorry.
good.
Sorry,
Same
I'm
day.
like, yeah,
I was like,
same day.
Damn, they are passionate about this
Yeah,
for you.
no, so
Supportive.
like I fall and I like break my collarbone or smash my collarbone into the next lip, and then knock myself out at the same time, dude.
Oh, perfect.
And I just remember like being at my mom's wedding reception and just being like so out of it, dude. But like, yeah, that was like the first like encounter I had with like slamming. And like I learned really quick that I had a high pain tolerance. Like literally break my collarbone. Wait, the concussion and the collarbone were not the same. Okay, so I'm confusing that. So I break the collarbone and I get up and like put my hands back on my handlebars, and I go and like my shoulder's not working. I'm like, what is going on? And yeah, I look over and I had separated it so much that it was sticking up, like not through the skin, but it was like 16 centimeters or something of separate. It was big, dude. It looked like a golf ball. Like the reason I noticed is I leaned my neck like that, and it, like my helmet touched. And
I hope it's 16 millimeters.
Yeah,
not
maybe.
16
Sorry.
centimeters.
Yeah, I don't know your English math, so.
Yeah.
So hospital, you go into this wedding reception.
No, so the concussion comes later in that wedding reception. For some reason, those just blended together. So, yeah, thankfully, right across the street from the track, there was like a fire station. So they like have the firefighters come like look at me. And they're like, yeah, your collarbone's definitely broken. So go get slinged up. And like, this was a really interesting time because they were like, well, you're young enough where it should heal quick, so you don't need surgery. So I don't get surgery. But right at the same time, like at this point in time, I was probably like 5'5". I was short, like not tall. And at that same time, I start growing like crazy. And in the time of breaking my collarbone till the time of it healing, I had grown like 8 inches or something. Like I grew fast. So my collarbone took like 6 months to heal because every time there was like that calcium buildup, it would just break because I was growing so quickly. Dude, it was brutal. So something that should have taken like 4 weeks at the time, like ended up taking 6 months because I was just outpacing my growth. And then the state qualifier rolls around, and then back to back, like KO myself and have to go to my mom's wedding thing. And I'm just like so out of it. Broke a DOT helmet, dude. Like, dude. That was like, but within that same year, I just like wreck myself. And I was like, okay, like I guess I love this because all I can think about is like, when can I do this again?
Yeah, that shows you that it's important, right? You can absolutely KO yourself, and you're like, all right, when can I ride
Nothing else
next?
mattered.
Yeah,
you know?
You don't have that fear. It's like, this is what I want to do, you know, if it's the end of me.
Yeah.
So
and like that's like something that's like hard to explain to somebody. Yeah. You know, like I like remember my mom always being so mad, like especially after the concussion, because I was like, it definitely like changed me. I think like I was always so good with numbers, and like after that I was like started slowly becoming very dyslexic. So I think she could probably see a lot of those things like changing, you know, and like also probably being like a young teenager, like all that stuff compounding. But like she was like, why are you still wanting to ride after all these things have happened to you? And I was like, dude, nothing else matters. Like, this is all I want to do.
Yeah, it's like, that Bukowski quote, right? Like, find what you love and let it kill you.
Totally.
It's like so true.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I got knocked out the other day. I'm like, all right, when can I ride?
Yeah.
It's like frustrating.
And I was angry about that.
Yeah,
but
it's so hard though, because it's just like, when you find that thing that you love, like you can't put it down, you can't stop. And like I was just on a trip to Connecticut, and the girl I was with is a skydiver, and we were talking about that, and she was saying like, you know, not many people understand like why you would jump out of an airplane. She's like, I can't describe the feeling it gives me. And I was like, well, that's like the same thing with riding. Like I can't like tell somebody how it makes me feel. Like you just have to experience that. So that was like a big milestone, I think. It's just like, I think those are the things that weed people out of those sports early on, is like those big slams. Like you talk to somebody who's like, oh, I used to skate, or I used to ride BMX, and I broke my arm, and that was that. That was it.
Yeah.
And so from there it was like, I was kind of like, cool, I'm in this, you know.
And then obviously the rest of your teenage years, were you still hanging out through your teenage years with these guys that you were racing BMX with?
So traveling with all those guys like a ton, like just going to all the nationals, and like it was cool, like getting to travel that much, and like being like, I wouldn't say like necessarily a top national rider, but I could like podium at a national, which was super cool. And like just going all over the place. And I think it like really started getting serious when I was like 14ish, going into being 15. And there was a race, and this was like when I started like figuring out how to like jump really well. And there was a race in Littleton, Colorado, and it was windy, and I'm like jumping this like double pack, like there was like 3 doubles in a row, so like a 6-pack of doubles, and I was jumping through there, and it was like 40 minutes before the race started, so just like getting warmed up, and the wind blew me, and it blew me one way, and I like overcorrected, and the wind stopped, and I fell and tore my liver and bruised both my kidneys. And like, so it's like all these injuries are like kind of stacking up, and like, but that one was one of those ones where like, again, like I have a super high pain tolerance. So I was just like, I have a stomach ache. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I raced my first 2 motos because it was total points, so best points overall. I went 1-1, and between the last round, or the second to last round, and the final round, I went to the bathroom, and I was peeing, and I wouldn't have noticed anything, but I like felt something come out, and it was a blood clot. And I like looked down, and it was just like peeing red wine. And you know, being a 14-year-old kid, you're just like,
oh my God.
I just started crying, dude. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I'm gonna die. So I remember like running over to my dad, and like in my younger years, I was probably like a little bit of a weenie with things, like just kind of like I'd stub my toe and like crying. So as I started growing up, like growing into this BMX thing, I like got tough pretty quick, and I came up to my dad and I was like, hey, I just peed blood. And he was like, are you sure? And like they were kind of giving me shit because I was laying in the back of the truck being like, I have a stomach ache. They're like, you're fine, get out here and hang out. And he's like, well, do you want to go to the hospital, or do you want to finish your last race? And I don't know if he like fully believed that I was peeing blood or what the deal was, but I was like, I'll finish my last race, so do that. And, you know, get my trophy, and I'm like talking to everybody, and I like come back over to the car, and I'm like, okay, let's go to the hospital. He's like, you're fine. I'm like, no, dude, like I'm scared. And he's like, you're fine. And I like just break out into tears, dude. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna die. Yeah. And he's like, all right, let's go like drink some water and like on the way home, just pee and like show me that you're peeing blood. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, we're like driving home, and I just start like crying in the back of the car, and they like take me to the hospital, and you know, they're all pretty lackadaisical in the hospital because you look fine, you know. And I'm in the emergency room. They're like, all right, go pee in this cup, and like we'll go from there. And pee in the cup, and I like open the door, and there was a nurse standing there, and she sees like that it's like cranberry juice, dude. And she's like grabs my shoulder. She's like, wheelchair, throw me in a wheelchair. And from the second that I opened that door to being in a bed was like probably no more than 10 minutes.
Oh, shit.
And my dad was just like in tears, dude. He felt so bad. He's like,
way.
and it never, from that point forward, he's never really doubted an injury. He's like, all right, like it's probably pretty bad. But yeah, it was like all that stuff right in that time frame. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. Racing was just like one of those things where I was like, I couldn't stop going back for it, you know?
That's what makes internal concussion,
dude,
lacerations.
Yeah, you can't see them.
You can't see it. You don't take them serious.
Yeah.
You know? It's like broken bone. You're like, yep, broken. But
Can't hold on to the handlebars anymore.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or can't pedal. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. It's like you knock teeth out, and like, you know, you fucked up because your teeth are hanging out of your face, but like you're bleeding on the inside. You can't see that.
It's funny. You can feel the blood when you pee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can just like literally be in the middle of the night not paying attention. You can tell it's like warm, or it's weird.
Yep. Just like was it last year or the year before? Maybe it was 2 years ago. Jason, my buddy Jason, fell at Boulder Skate Park.
Yeah.
And I could almost tell immediately that it was an internal thing, the way he was kind of like laying there, because I've seen enough people do it now. And he was like, I'm just going to drive home. I'll be fine. And I was like, before you drive home, like go over there in that corner and pee. And sure enough, he's like, pee's blood. And I was like, he was like, but it was pretty bad. He was like almost in shock.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like I'm glad I didn't let you drive home. Like, let's go to the ER, you know? But it's like, it's hard to know like when you've done something like that because you can't see it, you know? Like when you break an arm and it's crooked, like shit's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on from BMX, like what, is there any like big memories from it? What are like the overall, I mean, that was a big part of your, I mean, that's like, that's the foundation of your life when I look back.
For
like,
sure.
We missed by 1 year when I moved to mountain biking. And kind of bums me out that we didn't race each other.
I know.
Literally, I got out when I was 12 or 13.
You should build up a race bike. We should go do some late night racing this year at Dacono.
I gotta start doing some squats.
That'd be fun, dude.
That'd be sick. But yeah, like what are, I mean, before we move on, I feel like both of us, our lives are built on this foundation of BMX.
Yep.
And I mean, we already talked about mine, but like, what are those like kind of big moments?
I think the big moments were just like learning how to like relentlessly work hard and not give up, and like being on those road trips. Like I always loved being on the road. Like, excuse me, growing up, like we drove to Georgia a bunch, so like I loved the road trip. But then like incorporating friends and like going to new places and riding new tracks, like that was so cool. Like those were big things for me, and like. And also didn't understand it at the time, but my parents going out of their way to like support that, and like, you know, going in hindsight now, I look back at that and I'm like, holy shit, like you guys put yourself in debt to like put gas in the car, to make sure we had a hotel to sleep in, to pay for the $400 weekend of racing, you know, just to race bikes, not for food, none of that shit. Like the amount of money they spent to go to like, I don't know if we were 10 or 15 nationals a year, we were hitting it hard, you know? And so like, yeah, just like, right now looking back on it, it's just the amount of respect I have for them, like going out of their fucking way and like basically enabling me to grow beyond what I ever thought was possible.
Yeah.
And then just being able to like win a couple nationals, and like I won a national in Las Vegas, and that was like the coolest moment of my life, you know? Like that was the coolest fucking thing. Like big national in Las Vegas, like all my friends are there. That's actually how so one of my best friends, Mike Eldridge, that's how we became friends, is because when I was laid up from the torn liver, we grew up racing BMX together too. But we were all, like always kind of like more or less competitors, not necessarily friends, I would say. We like knew each other, but we were like, you know, going head to head. So it was like kind of like we'd look at each other, but we didn't really rock with each other. And I was laid up with that torn liver. And him and his dad, Todd, came by the hospital, and they brought me like a big bag of candy because I was on like liquid diet. So they were like just trying to fuck with me. And we had planned to go to the Las Vegas National, but I tore my liver, and it was like in a month or whatever. And they're like, yeah, you're not going to be able to ride. But we were going anyways because we already had the reservations and blah, blah, blah. And so my parents started talking with his dad, and like they're like, well, he can just come with us and race, and like they can hang out. And like we weren't like friends at all really at that point. And so we went on that trip, and like it's been like friendship ever since, which is super cool. But my mom probably still doesn't know this, but my dad let me race. And that's the national
and
that
that
I
was the
won.
one that you won.
So like coming like shouldn't have been racing. Like I was doing like sprints. Like I'd been off my bike for like 4 weeks going into Vegas. So I was like doing sprints to like kind of get back. And I was young, so like you can kind of rebound pretty quick. And I think I was probably 15 at that time. So yeah, I was doing like sprints and all that stuff, and like went out there and won the national. And I was just like, holy shit. And I remember my dad was just like, don't fall. Whatever you do, like, don't fall. Like, I don't need your mom finding out about this, you know? And like, so I remember like in qualifying for that national, this kid fell in front of me, and he fell in between like a set of like whoops in the rhythm section. And I had never jumped like 2 rollers before. And so I just like pulled back as hard as I could. And like, just remember like jumping over him and like kind of thinking to myself, like, please don't sit up, you know? And it was like one of those slow motion things where like our eyes locked as I was jumping over him. And like, yeah. And went on to like make a good friend out of that and win a national. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, that was a big moment.
I love that your dad's like, don't crash. You're like,
oh yeah,
thanks. Easier said than
yeah,
done.
totally.
Dad, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and like, yeah, I have a photo of that somewhere. I was like wearing like girl jeans and like, oh yeah, dude.
I feel like every crash you just like wake up on the ground and you're like, huh. That just happened.
Yeah,
you know?
That's what I thought was gonna happen. Like I've jumped this kid, and I'm like, he's gonna sit up, and like I'm gonna clip my wheel, and like all the scenarios run through my head in like that split second. Like somehow it worked out. So
that's so sick.
Yeah, I think that was probably the pinnacle of the race career, and like from there, like started going to like more nationals and stuff, but like going without my dad with like other friends and stuff like that, and then I kind of just got burnt out on racing.
Yeah, what's the transition to more freestyle skate? Like, where'd that come from?
So growing up in Johnstown, like I still lived in Johnstown at this point in time, and there was like a little prefab skate park that I still actually love to ride today, but that was the first skate park I ever rode. And I would just like ride my bike down there and like fuck around on it. Like, and I was at the same time like riding like the Fix and stuff with Jordan McMullen and Chris Stallman. And
what's the Fix?
It's a bike shop here in Boulder. It's over by 𝙎𝘾𝘼 Bike Park now, but it used to be what was it? It was off 𝙎𝘾𝘼 before too, right?
30th and Bluff.
Okay.
30th and Bluff.
Okay, so right up the street, yeah, from where it is now. But they had like a full set of dirt jumps out there, and a pump track, and like later on in the Fix, they like added like what was that, like a 3-story roll-in? Yeah, it was gnarly, dude, and it was just like jumps out there. Like this is before public bike parks, so they kind of like started the public bike park thing. Like,
in my podcast, I kept talking about Shawnee McGovern.
Yeah.
He's the one that started the Fix. He used to be on the hill in Boulder, like the main street where the CU campus is, the college. And then he moved to 30th and Bluff, and he started that whole, it's his business, and started all his jumps. And he just built another pump track at his new business.
Oh, really? We'll have to go cruise that.
Yeah. July or June 4th opening. But yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah, so it was like that kind of stuff, like getting a taste for like freestyle. And then I remember Eldridge lived in Erie, and we had watched Fly Bikes Uno, which is like my favorite BMX video. And the reason it's so cool is because they just rode around Spain and collected pallets, like shipping pallets, and made obstacles out of them. And I think I'm 15 at the time, because definitely because we weren't driving yet. And me and him watched that. I think I had it on like my PSP, the small PlayStation thing, and we watched it on there. And I was like, dude, let's go do this. And so, yeah, we like went around Erie, Colorado, and like just built like ramps. And I remember like learning how to do an X-up, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And that same day I learned how to do a toboggan. And so like it starts clicking with me that like, okay, like racing's fun, but I also like going really fast and jumping shit and like not having to worry about other people. And that's probably when it started clicking for me, and like started riding the Fix a lot more. And then start meeting more people at skate parks. And I think we were going to Joe's Bike Shop, which was like the local bike shop, and we'd been going there all through racing. And Joe was the man. It was like the coolest BMX shop to hang out at, like BMX specific, which is very rare, very hard to do. And like it was just a vibe. Like you could go in there and watch a BMX video, and like everybody was cool. It's like a skate shop but for BMX. It's just so cool, you know. And there was a dude who worked there who's still a really good friend of mine today, Tanner Wheat. And he kind of took me under his wing, because I was like a pretty awkward kid still at that point. and he was like, hey, you should come ride the skate park with us sometime. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, so nervous because like he was like the dude, you know. And he sent me a message on MySpace one night. He was like, hey, Louisville tonight, like 8 o'clock, and this is in like dead of winter, so it's cold. And I tell my dad, and he's like, okay. So he drives me over there, and like my dad like sits in the car in the parking lot, or like drives off and goes and does something. And that's the first time I got to like really experience like being part of like a BMX crew in freestyle. And I just remember like hucking myself. Like there was like a 3-foot cone, and I was doing like fly out of a quarter pipe like 8 feet high to flat. And everybody just was like, who the fuck is this kid? But I was just like trying to prove that I could like hang out with them, you know. And it worked because they like all started like hanging out with me a little bit more. And it was right before that my dad had bought me like a freestyle BMX like DK bike because I was using my race bike for this stuff and like bending my wheels and shit. And he was just like over it. So he buys me a freestyle bike, and like it was kind of over at that point. I was just like, this is all I want to do, you know.
And for everyone out there, this Louisville, I wanted to call it Loserville.
Yeah.
And it's where Mike and I met. We kind of missed each other BMX racing, and then that's how we connected. That was the first ever skate park I rode, actually.
Oh, really?
Maybe Denver, which I don't consider that a skate park because it's so terrible.
Yeah,
but,
it was terrible.
Louisville, yeah.
Yeah.
Start of an era.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like that's where we met. Like it was all because like I like to think of my life in terms of like the people that were like the pivotal people in my life, right? And it's like that Brian Bott dude is like the first one who like really put me on. And then like Tanner Wheat is like that next guy of like, hey dude, like you can like come ride with us and come hang out. It's like, holy shit, this is cool. And so, you know, I started falling more in love with the freestyle stuff, and like, you know, I still wanted to race because like that's where my heart started with this whole thing. But like it was getting very serious. Like Olympics started being talked about, you know, like people start training. Like I'm 15 years old, that's when like dudes are starting to work out and they're getting huge. Like I'd go to you know, that cow corral that I was talking about behind the gate, and there's dudes that like the season before we were the same size, and now he's put on like 30 pounds of muscle and he looks like the freaking Hulk. And I'm just like, dude, what is happening? And so I didn't have the drive to like necessarily like be in the gym. I just wanted to ride my bike. So I started falling into the freestyle stuff a lot more. And I think that's around the time that I met the Cordovas. So Joey and Matt Cordova.
Before we get into that, so what age was it where you two both met each other at Louisville?
He was probably 15
I
or
would
16.
say 15.
So about the same time we're talking about right now.
Yep.
So 15 years ago.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
did you take that same kind of drive that you had with BMX? You saw the fast kids and you're like, that's where I'm going to be. With the freestyle stuff, were you seeing stuff from Tanner and the other boys? Or were you kind of...
Well, they had just different styles than me. So they were like more like streety kind of, not like going fast. They were going high, but they weren't going fast. So I like didn't really understand. Like I didn't relate as much. I thought what they were doing was really cool. And then I think we got like Fuel TV or something. And so I started watching like props and stuff on there. And like the first like real BMX video that I saw outside of Fly Bikes Uno, which I don't even know how I stumbled across that. Maybe like a Dance Comp magazine or something. But it was System Cycle, which was like the parent company of DK Bicycles. They were like Midwest based, and like they had like all the sick riders, and they had like the style of riding. Like they had like Robbie Miranda and like Chris Doyle and like all these badass dudes. And I was like, holy shit, like you can ride jumps that big, like just losing it, you know? And so that's where like it really started to click for me. I'm like, okay, like I need to learn how to do a 360. And right at that same time we had moved, or my dad had moved. I still wasn't living with him yet. But he moved to a house. This is like end of 2008, maybe early 2009. And that house was in a neighborhood that didn't get finished because of the recession. So there was empty lots next to the house. And so we started building jumps there. And that's all I wanted. Like I built a little pump track so I could like practice for racing, but we built this little double, and I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to 360. So I'm learning like all these tricks there, and then I'd go to the track and like, you know, but all I wanted to do was ride that jump. So
yeah, that was it. So kind of because people were getting so serious with the track riding, then that's kind of, you start finding your passion, your love in double or riding dirt jumps.
Yeah, just the fact that it was like free was so appealing to me. Like I don't know, like being such like a lost kid and like just wanting something that like was free and fun. Like, I don't know, everything seemed so structured in my life up until that point. Like a lot of like turbulence, just like with parents getting divorced and remarried and like stuff that like, again, as a kid, like you're not really thinking about processing that stuff. So like something that was like a true outlet, like racing BMX was an outlet, but like it was still, there was formalities and like,
yeah, you had to be there for your 30 minutes of practice at 11 a.m. or whatever it was. But with skate park and with dirt jumps, then you get to show up when you want, you ride for as long as you want.
And like, yeah, BMX racing, like you're still on a team and you're still representing like a team as a whole. Like it wasn't like you got to like really be yourself. So like then I started to like figure out like, oh, this is my style. This is how I like to dress. These are the people I like to hang out with. Like this is the music that I like, whatever. But it all came through that like freestyle vein.
Yeah, you kind of could find the beat to your own drum.
Yeah,
instead of the structured beat.
And I like feel like very fortunate for that, because I see a lot of kids growing up now like that, you know, don't have that like path, and they're just so lost in what they want to do. And like I was super lost up until I found those things, and then it was just like crystal clear of what I wanted to do, you know.
Yeah, so tell us more about the that empty lot.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I've built so many jumps over my life, and finding the right spot is the hardest thing.
It's the key, right?
Yeah, you just get torn down. Equestrians find them. So now you have this lot. You have a hose.
Yep.
It's right next to your house. Like
the potential is unlimited.
Yeah. So who's knocking on your door and being like, hey, we're building.
Yeah. So like we had that spot for like probably a year, I think, before anybody like really took note. Like we'd race BMX on Saturday. Everybody would come back over, and like my parents always used to have these really fun like parties. Like when UFC, like they would like the UFC fight night, we'd have parties with all the BMX families. So all the kids would stay outside and ride bikes.
And this is outside your door?
Outside the door, yeah. So all the parents are inside, like hanging out, watching UFC, drinking beers, and like all the kids are outside, like drinking Capri Suns and Mountain Dew and like jumping jumps.
So you got a vibe outside your house.
Yeah.
You're the spot.
Yeah. It was, I mean, yeah, I think about how fortunate I am a lot. It's like literally we were the hub.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody wanted to be at our house. Like and neighborhood kids started coming over, and like it was really cool. And a lot of so many of my friends started coming over more and more. Totally. And like this is the point where I'm like, maybe like I should live down here at my dad's house, you know. And like that idea is in the back of my mind. And around the same time is when the Cordovas hit me.
I was about to ask, like, how do you go from one jump that you're learning 360s on to a set? Because that's a lot of work.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like this big central pile of dirt that we were kind of just pulling the dirt off of. And it was like a little, like there was two sets of jumps that we had built. One of them was just like a roller into a double, and the other one was like a little speed jump into like kind of a longer jump. But they weren't anything crazy. They were fun, but not anything crazy. And I get a message on MySpace from Joey Cordova, and Joey was like the dude in Colorado, like was an insane BMX racer, and then was like the big dude for freestyle. Like Joey was 360 whipping box jumps and backflipping stuff, and like we'd seen each other at the skate park before, but like me being this awkward kid, I was so scared to say hi. And
how old was Joey at this time?
I think Joey's like 5 or 6 years older than me.
Okay, yeah. So you were
quite
15,
a bit older.
16.
Yeah, he's like in his 20s, you know.
All right.
And he's intimidating because he's an insane bike rider, and he's rolling with that clique from Joe's Bike Shop. So I think he maybe caught wind of it through them, and like, yeah, he just sent me a message. He's like, hey, I heard you guys have some property. I kind of told him the situation as a 15-year-old would probably tell the story. And he was like, cool, man. Like, I'd love to come check it out sometime. So I tell my dad, and my dad's like, he was working at a camper company. He was doing like installs for camper companies. And he was like, we have a Bobcat. I can see if I can borrow that.
That's so rad.
You know? And I was like, okay. So I tell Joey that. Joey's like, well, I'm a really good equipment operator, so perfect. And so Joey comes over, looks at the jumps, and before he came over, he sent me a message. He's like, hey, do you want to ride a foam pit? And like, of course, as a kid riding BMX, I want to learn a backflip. So yeah, I would go ride a foam pit with Joey, break my nose. It was July 11th, so 7/11. That's why I remember it so well. Like my just gushing blood everywhere. And that's when I meet his brother Matt too. And
is Matt older or younger?
He's younger. So okay. Matt's 3 years older than me. And Matt's like my brother now. Like we're best friends. But at the time, I think we just looked too similar, and like, dude, we did not rock with each other at all. I remember like connecting eyes with him the first time at that foam pit, and he was just like, nah, we didn't rock with each other at all. And yeah, then, you know, we make a plan to start building these jumps, and we get the Bobcat, and Matt's hanging out every day, and like something just clicks, you know, like we just become friends.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for reference, when I got into BMX, when I came to Colorado, there was the top dudes. You had David Herman, who we talked about, but every time I went to Sky High, that was a BMX track in Arvada, it was Joey and Matt.
Yeah.
Joey it was him and Zach Rader were like the top dudes.
Zach Rader, dude.
Yeah.
The man.
And like they shut down the track. Like everyone stopped riding to watch them.
So
and
fast.
Then Matt would come out, his little brother, Matt Cordova, in like sweatpants on like a 16 or 18 inch
Little
bike,
dude too.
doing no foot cants, like shut down in a freestyle way. Matt was never like the racer kid, but he could go fast, but then he would do like the biggest trick, and you're just like, where did that come from?
And it was
like,
funny because he'd be like a little kid on a big bike, and
Yeah.
he would just be whipping that thing.
So like Joey and Matt would show up and just shut down any BMX track. So
So to get this,
yeah.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, to get this MySpace message.
Yeah.
On a tangent, do you remember the song that you had on your MySpace page?
Most importantly.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Was it for a woman? For a girl?
Probably later on, but I think the most popular one that I had, it was a song called Summer of '89. I don't know who the artist was, but I'll play it for you guys later.
We need this. And
Pretty
then,
good.
do you remember what Joey's was?
No,
Oh,
it was
okay.
probably some like it was probably like Under Oath or something like that, or like what was the Sky Eats Airplane was the band that they listened to a lot. So
Right, so it was a big deal for these guys to be reaching out to you.
dude, it was like
to go work
it would
on
be
your
like
land.
if the president sent me a message today, you know, like that's like the level, like being that kid, like, you know, I'd seen these guys in videos and like I'd looked up to them, but they were so elusive to me, and like when you're young, you don't understand that people are just people, you know.
Right.
So I'm like idolizing these dudes, and I like get this message on freaking, like I got the friend request first and then get the message, and I was just like, I'm probably like looking at it on like my PSP or something, you know, just like losing my mind. I was
Running out of class.
yeah, I think I was at my dad's house. I was like, Dad, look.
But he knows who Joey is. Like
Uh-huh.
he knows the severity of it, or like the importance of it.
Yep. And so yeah, we start like building these jumps, and like right around the same time as when I meet the girl that like basically had me move in with my dad,
Yeah.
you know. So I'm like hanging out with more of my BMX friends that live down in like, you know, Firestone, Longmont area, and the guy I was hanging out with the most was Chris Stallman, so the guy that I originally saw at the BMX track. And he went to school up there, so he knows, and he was like a ladies' man, so he knew all the girls. And so one of the girls he was hanging out with, her friends, like starts messaging me on MySpace, of course.
Hell yeah.
And-
What was her song?
Dude, I can't remember.
Just get over the song.
I wish I could.
Sorry,
Hold on. Just
I never had a MySpace.
Oh, you
so-
didn't? I was
No,
about to
no.
ask.
So
Okay.
I'm just.
I mean,
I'm
I can't
novelized
I
by
can't
this.
tell you for sure what my song was all the time, but I either had a Burberry page or a Louis Vuitton page. Like I always like designed the background.
Oh, the
designer
backdrop.
bags, dude.
Damn.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so I start hanging out with Chris and these girls, and one of them, the first one's name was Harley, and I think she got like her phone taken away or something, and like she started texting me off her friend's phone. Her friend's name was Kenzie.
Do you
And
want to know her MySpace song?
No,
Yeah.
I'm over it now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You bring that up again, just go home.
And so like Harley would text me off Kenzie's phone because Harley didn't have, like, her phone got taken away, and then Harley would leave and Kenzie would start texting me.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I kind of like move on from Harley and start texting Kenzie, and like we never really dated, but like I would say we were like boyfriend and girlfriend, like hypothetically at
You held
15
hands.
years old or whatever. Yeah. And I remember me and Mike Eldridge rode our bikes over. So I was a freshman in high school. So I was, 15. And we rode our bikes over to the middle school, which is, they were a year younger than us in school. So I rode our bike over there on like the last day, or it was Christmas break. So it was the day before Christmas break. And like we see Kenzie and Harley, and this girl runs up to Kenzie, and her name's Morgan. I didn't know her at the time, but immediately I'm just like, well, I like her now. So, and so I end up starting to talk to this Morgan girl, and like, yeah, we ended up dating for 3 years, and like she was the reason really where I was just like, okay, like I love riding BMX, and I had been dating her at the point where I decided to move for like, 5 or 6 months. So I was just like, shit, dude, like why do I live in Johnstown still? Like I had friends up there, but they just like didn't vibe with what I was doing. It was like a small like farm town. So like everything I was doing was so different than what my friends enjoyed doing in Johnstown. So first day of sophomore year, I was 16, and I had a car, and I drove home to my mom's house and packed my shit up and drove to my dad's house. And
just like that.
Just like that. That was the end of that era, dude.
And then transitioned schools as well, right?
Yeah. So the school that I was going to at the time, I'd gone there from kindergarten through sophomore year. And so, like, you know, the people, and it's a small town, so, you know, the people that I went to kindergarten with, like, I went to school with them the whole time, you know, like, there's a girl, she's still one of my good friends today. Her name's Chandler, and, like, she's my oldest friend. Like, I've known her since I was 5 years old, which is so bizarre. Like, we'll, like, grab margaritas every now and then. She's super cool, and, like, yeah, it's just bizarre. But she always, like, as I was growing up into the BMX thing, like, I was always telling her I was going to move and shit. And I remember, like, I was probably a little full of shit in those years. And I remember, like, that sophomore year, like, that summer, telling her, I was like, yo, I don't think I'm coming back this year. She's like, yeah, right. Like, you always say stuff like that. And I just remember, like, it was, like, the middle of a class. And I just, like, got up and left. I was just so, like, something just clicked in my head where I was just, like, to do what I want to do, like, I can't be here anymore. Yeah. And I think it was also all the people at school doubting me, you know, because I'd said I'd want to do that for, like, a year or two. And, like, yeah, I remember
like,
she was sitting next to me,
this.
and I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. You won't see me here tomorrow. And she's like, okay, whatever. And then, yeah, I just went home and packed the car up and moved.
Do you know how hard it is for me not to ask what Chandler's MySpace song is? But yeah, okay, so you moved down to your dad's, and your mum was cool with it?
She was definitely bummed, dude. Like, you know, when you're a 16-year-old kid, you're not really thinking about anybody else's feelings. No. So I was probably just like, fuck you later, you know? And, like, my mom was like I said, she had recently gotten remarried a couple years before. So, like, I think that, like, was pretty hard for me too. Like, just not knowing how to process those things when you're a kid. You're just kind of just, like, angsty, and, like, you're really worried about yourself. And yeah, I probably didn't handle that in the most eloquent way, but went on to go live with my dad and Christy, my stepmom. So, and that, like, turned out to be a really good thing, you know. It's like we had these jumps. Like, that was another huge thing for me. It's like I could walk out the door and ride these jumps. And so, like, all these things in my life seem like they're, like, starting to come together. And it's like, but the one thing that's in the back of my head at this point is racing BMX. You know, I'm still racing BMX, but, like, my heart's not there anymore. And yeah, I think I was probably going into being 17, and I remember sitting down in my basement with my parents and being like, so I don't think I'm doing this anymore. And they were not happy.
Really?
Yeah.
They
and,
put
like,
so much into it.
Yeah, they, you know, like, their hearts at that point were probably far more into it than what mine was, because, like, I had been thinking this way for a little while. It's like, dude, I'm riding freestyle, and, like, I can see, like, they weren't super well versed in that world, so I don't think that they could see, like, the upside of, you know, what that, it could be the same thing as racing BMX.
Right. Right. You're talking about the upside with regards to going pro, or you're talking about just the culture,
lifestyle, the culture, like, if it was ever, like, a job or whatever it was, like, I don't know. They were just so invested in the racing thing, and rightfully so. Like, they had put themselves in debt so I could go race BMX bikes. So they took it pretty rough, and, like, yeah, it was walking on eggshells around there for a little bit after that, and it was a bummer, but, you know, I still went to the track here and there, but yeah, I was just so burnt out on, like, just working my ass off at that, and, like, I just wasn't having as fun, because, like, it was a production every time. You had to, like, go out to the track and, like, warm up and race, and, like, you're training and doing all that stuff. It's like, I just want to ride my bike and, like, hang out with my girlfriend and my friends and, like, eat donuts and drink Mountain Dew and just, like, listen to rap music, you know what I mean? Like, that was, like, and that's what was going on when we were riding these jumps. So it was just like, cool, I think it's time for me to step away from this thing. So that was it.
And then so that lot that you had out there, the sand lot, how did that grow? How many did you get? A lot more people coming around, or what?
Yeah. So
what was the story behind that?
So the more we start digging out there, the better it gets. And so it turned into, like, you would roll off our driveway, and there would be, like, a roller, and then a jump, a jump, a jump, and then a right-hand berm, and then a big step-up jump, and then a double jump. And then we started adding a bunch of different jumps, like lips into landings, and, like, it turned into this really cool thing. If I can find a photo or a video, I'll put it here in this video too, because it was a cool space. And so people start catching wind of this. You know, I'm starting to go to skate parks. I have my license. I'm going all over, and I'm inviting people to come ride my jumps. And yeah, it started turning into like, you know, I said earlier, like a hub of all the BMX racers, but like freestyle dudes are coming. Guys who are, you know, podiuming at X Games are coming and riding my backyard, you know, like, and it was cool because like the street we lived on was a cul-de-sac, and I think there was like a total of maybe 7 to 10 houses on that street, and all the neighbors were down, dude. So they just like would put lawn chairs out and like drink beers and watch us ride bikes.
That's so wild.
And it was so, you know, cool to have that, because like they were all just like, I don't think that they even understood like how crazy it was. It's like dudes that are like riding X Games are here riding these jumps, you know. It's like a pretty cool deal. And like I still like don't think I grasp how fortunate I was to have that, you know. And like, you know, I was always pissed off because I was getting yelled at because we'd leave the water on, you know. Being an adult and having to pay the water bill now, I'm like, I would have beat my ass. Like if my parents gave me so much grace with that stuff, I would have beat my ass, dude. Like I told you to turn the water off. Like there'd be just water leaking everywhere. Like I'll have to ask my parents what those water bills were. I can't imagine they were cheap.
It'd be funny if they had one saved.
Yeah.
You know.
Dude.
Up on the fridge.
Yeah, totally.
We've been waiting for this day for the last
for real.
15 years, Michael.
Oh, my stepmom Christy for sure knows. She knows exactly what the.
Oh, yeah.
I could ask her and she'll tell me right off how much they were. But yeah.
Did you ever make it out there, Sean? Did you ever ride them?
Oh yeah, you never rode the Sandlot, dude. Damn.
He wasn't. He was just
He's too cool for you, by this
tough
point.
guy back then.
Well, that was like
Yeah,
the thing
skinny
is like
jeans on.
we hadn't seen each other in this like basically from being like 16, probably from the time we got our licenses, because you were like super into the mountain bike stuff at that point.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, we talked though. Like we would talk on MySpace. Like I remember like you'd post photos. There was like a jump spot that you posted, and there was like big trees and leaves. Maybe it was Wilson Wood. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember like messaging you about that, and like you wanted to come ride. Like I remember those photos. Like you're doing like an X up through the trees or something. Like,
and I feel like having the same birthdays on Facebook and MySpace. Like,
just always staying in touch.
Yeah, I think it was our birthdays that kind of kept us in touch, because the one other person I always saw was Mike Murfitt. It's just weird having that. So. Anyone that wants to have a job at Traction, you got to have a June 27th birthday.
I was just I just grabbed beers with an old coworker from Oscar Blues, and we were talking about how her brother is on June 27th as well. She was like, "Your birthday's coming up, right? You're turning 30." She's like, and I was like, "How do you remember that?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Don't you remember my brother's birthday?" I was like, "Whoa!" And there was another girl that I forgot that I worked with at Oscar Blues named Beth, and she has the same birthday as us. So,
well, it sounds like if either of them need a job, just drop the resume at the door.
Good shout, dude.
Yeah.
June 27, dude.
So you got Sandlot, you got this huge community, and I mean, it shapes your riding. You know, like you take this drive you have from BMX, and you can, you know, apply it to this dirt jumps. You're trying 360s, you're learning turn downs. Like, I feel like you changed as a rider. Like, was that more impactful than BMX racing to you?
I think so, because like I said, I started figuring out like my own style, like who I was, and like then having like somebody like a Joey there who's like a little older than us, and like he can kind of give us some guidance, and like then we have all these like big name pros coming through and hanging out, and like then getting to travel and ride skate parks, and like, you know, racing BMX was great, but my parents were there all the time, so I couldn't cut loose and be a fucking idiot.
Totally.
Now I'm getting to like drive around the country with my friends and like be a dumbass, you know, and like that, like you learn a lot really quick, and like it's one of those things where like you learn a lot of responsibility quick, because like when you're, you know, halfway across the state or in a different state and your friend falls down and knocks himself the fuck out and you're 15, 16 years old, like there's no parents around to fix that.
Totally, yeah.
And you have to figure out like how to get your friend somewhere safely to the hospital or whatever, and like so much responsibility is learned. So I think that's probably the most like impactful bike riding years of my life, just learning that responsibility, you know, and like accountability. It's like pretty cool.
Yeah. As far as the sound, like from outsider, obviously I was just kind of keeping up with you on MySpace. I guess it's Facebook now. It was like, that's when I really kind of was like, holy shit, the Sandlot, Mike, you know. I feel like that was like one of the most, you know, milestones for you. Like you came into yourself. I mean, obviously it's teenage years, but like you had this culture around you, and like everyone kind of started knowing who you were because of it. And
that's like, I feel like when I think about like when my personal brand started like turning into something, like that's when like all my like handles started turning into like BMX Murfitt, you know. And I was just like, okay, like that's when I started understanding like I could probably like do something with this, you know, and like getting to ride those jumps every day, you know, I'd walk out the door before school and like get some laps in, or come home at lunch and do some laps, and like how cool was that, you know? And like then
it's every kid's dream.
Yeah. And I would like, you know, everything started becoming a little easier. Like I could 360 tail whip a jump.
Yeah.
That's crazy, you know, like, but it's because I'm riding with Matt and Joey every day.
Yeah.
Joey's out there front flipping jumps in my backyard. Like that's insane, you know, like 720ing stuff. And it's like seeing what's possible firsthand. Like, because at that time it's like to see anything, it was in a BMX video. Instagram didn't exist, you know, like we didn't get to see those clips coming out that quick. So like being able to be a part of that culture and the community like that close, and like Joey and Matt are going to California all the time, so they're coming back talking about how they're riding with Corey Nastasio.
Oh my God.
You know, like stuff like that. And it's like, holy crap. Like, again, it's one of those moments where I'm like, I'm one person away from like the coolest dude I've ever thought about ever knowing, you know? And like, that was like one of the, again, it's like that wake up call for me where it's like, oh crap, like I could do this. Like I could do something. And so, yeah.
That moment's so important.
Yeah.
There's only been a couple times in my life where it's like, hits me like that. And it's like,
those pivotal milestones.
It's just like I can do it with racing or, you know, traction, whatever these things are. It's like
this could be real.
This could be real, and then it's like I have to do this. It's like that confidence, and then it's that switch of being like I need to do this, and I have to do it right now.
For sure.
So, I guess with the Sandlot, every good thing has to come to an end. Like what is the closing on the Sandlot, and how did that affect you? I can only imagine,
dude. I mean, I can't imagine, or I can't even like fathom how many laps I probably did around that place, you know, and
how
like,
many miles,
how many hours we stood out there stacking dirt or whatever. Like that was my life for 3 or 4 years. And so I think I was, it might've been my senior year, the summer between senior year. And, it was the right before I went back for senior year. And we had like a really kick-ass birthday party. So from 18 and 19, we had birthday parties at my house where my parents would rent lights, and they're like construction lights, and we'd light it up and like throw these huge parties. There'd be like 100, 150 riders. Like I think the first year we did it, my dad cooked like 200 or 300 burgers and hot dogs. Like went through like a keg or two of Bud Light. Like it was crazy, dude. And we had to get porta potties and stuff out there. So like we really did it right. But after that second one, me and Matt were like we made the poor decision to tear out the whole first straight of jumps, and we were going to put 2 massive jumps in there, which didn't work because you couldn't pedal fast enough off the driveway. So they just sat in disrepair for a long time. So we were like, okay, let's fix this. So we go out there and we fix them, put it back to 3 jumps, you know, basically just wasted like 2 months of our lives, and we're getting close to getting this done. And finally get to the point of like, okay, we can ride these jumps today. And I had a Honda Ruckus that like I loved to ride to high school and stuff, and like me and Matt would doubles ride it all the time. And I lived like a mile from the grocery store, so we'd like hop on it and doubles ride it over there. And like we got a box of donuts and like a 2-liter of Mountain Dew. That was like our thing, dude. Mountain Dew and Dr. Pepper. So we rode back and like eat the donuts and drink our soda and like cool, let's go ride. And we walk out, and the dude who owned the land that the jumps were on, because they were just vacant lots in this neighborhood, was out there in a Bobcat tearing them down.
Oh my gosh.
Good God.
Dude, me and Matt, like I was just out in California hanging out with Matt, and we were like, dude, the amount of disbelief that we were in, standing there just being like, what the fuck is happening? You know, like, because it had been several years, like it just didn't seem real that could go away. And, you know, we weren't taking advantage of it the way we should have been. And it was probably time. It was probably time to put that to rest. So, yeah, definitely a bummer.
Yeah. And then obviously not having the dirt jumps, and there's not many around.
Yeah.
That's what made that place so special. You moving mostly to a skate park.
Yeah. So
you know,
Sandstone Skate Park, which is still like one of my favorite, and it's my local skate park, which is 3 minutes from where we sit right now. Started spending a lot more time out there, and like we would ride the jumps and then go to Sandstone at night. But I wouldn't say I was like a good skate park rider until the point that I'm like forced to ride more skate park. So yeah, we start riding the skate park a lot more, and start becoming more well versed in that. And like at this point, a buddy of mine, Justin Bruner, is like riding with us a bunch more. He like caught the tail end of the jumps, but then Justin was like, I don't know, probably 10 years older than me. So he was like such a cool dude because he owned a house and he was hardworking and he had so much good advice. So like then I start like hanging out with Justin a bunch and we're like traveling around going to all these skate parks, and he's just like, you know, at 16, 17 years old, he's giving me like this profound advice where I'm just like, still today, I'm like, man, I wish I would have listened more to what he was trying to say, like about like living in the moments and like, you know, just being stoked about what you're doing now, like all these different things. But yeah, start riding a lot more skate parks with him. Joey ends up moving. He moved before the jumps were torn down. He was living in California, and Matt was back and forth. So yeah, it was kind of like time to put that to rest because the dudes weren't there anymore. And like, yeah, I was kind of growing up and like.
And then what? You're like 17 at this point?
Yeah, I think 17.
So are you making the pilgrimage out to California yet, or?
Yeah, I think it was.
You're still in high school, right?
Yeah. So I had an extra grade in high school. So when I graduated, I was almost 19. Or I had an extra grade in elementary school. So we had an.
Did you get held back?
Yeah, I wish. It would have been a way more cool story. We had this goofy extra grade in my district in Johnstown called Junior First, and Junior First was created. I'm saying it again. It was a small little farm town. So they were all about their sports.
Oh,
so Junior First is created to make bigger football players and stronger wrestlers. So
God, that's so wild to me that they would like mess up a child.
So 5 years in high school.
Like think about like an extra year of like development, especially when you're like, you know, 17 or 18. Like,
right.
You're big when you're like working out at that age. So like I didn't realize it, you know, being a kid, but like being in high school, like Roosevelt was the high school in Johnstown with the big kids, and like every time they played any other team, they were hurting people because you have full-grown fucking men, like basically college football players out on the field playing with high school kids, just like destroying kids, dude. And so it was
mustaches and just standing over them with the deepest of
dude,
voices.
Straight up,
stay down.
That's exactly what it was. And yeah, it was like 3 years after I went through Junior First, they like stopped doing that program because they got in trouble. But yeah, so I was like 17, and I think that was the first time I went to California, if I remember right, first or second. And when I was 17, I went out there for a contest at Woodward West called the Ambush, and it was like an amateur contest. And I entered the dirt in the park, and the dirt was the first event that we did. And it's at Woodward West, which is like every freaking kid's dream to go to Woodward West.
Yeah, explain it for people that wouldn't know.
Yeah, so if you've never seen like Woodward at all, it's like it started off initially as like a cheerleader and gymnast camp. And from there, like I think the founder's kid was like a skateboarder or something. So they started building programs like summer camp for skateboarding and BMX.
And this is out in, is it Philadelphia?
There's one in
which one was the original one?
Pennsylvania, State College, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
And then tehachapi.
Yeah, and then tehachapi, California. So so it starts off as like this like pretty humble like summer program, and basically turns into like if you've ever played like Tony Hawk's skateboarding, like it's basically the mecca of like all skate parks, anything you could ever imagine riding, dirt jumps, everything's there. And you're also like stuffed in there with like cheerleaders and gymnasts, which is like probably the worst environment in the world to be putting skateboarders and BMXers with cheerleaders and gymnasts. Like it's not good, you know, like it is good, but it's not good. It's just like what every cheerleader or gymnast parent doesn't want their kid hanging out with. Like they're just stuffed right in there with them. But yeah, I mean, from the time that like I understood, like I started getting BMX magazines and there was always Woodward ads in there, and then watching Fuel TV, it's like dreaming of going to Woodward. That's like, as a BMX rider or a skateboarder, that's like your Disneyland, really. So the opportunity to go there and ride this contest, again, it's one of those moments where I was just like, dude, what the fuck? This is real. So I go out there. I won the dirt contest, which was super cool, and I like get to go on Fuel TV. You know, like I was, yeah, they like put my winning run. I like get a talk. Dude, it was sick. Catfish.
Every time I'm in Wahoo's,
yeah,
they're playing Fuel TV.
Oh yeah,
you probably watched it.
Maybe, dude. Yeah. So Catfish gave me like a gold DK random bike wrench. That was like the trophy and like a block. Dude, it was sick. Like, and I was like, holy shit, I just got interviewed to be on Fuel TV. This is sick. Wild. And then the next day was a skate park event, and I didn't do super great at that. But yeah, that was the first time, like I think my first time going out to California. And then
the Sandlot laps paying off.
Dude, they definitely paid off. Yeah. And like, yeah, then the next, after I fell at the skate park that night, we went to Corey Anastasio's house.
That's insane.
And like that was
Did you have the huge roll in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude, I walked up there and I wouldn't drop in.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
We have to put a clip of him doing a flip or something.
Dude, literally insane. And he was just like first run, dude, he just dropped in, and like these jumps are freaking the craziest thing I've probably still seen
the
to
biggest
this day.
jumps.
Yeah. And he just dropped in and like was doing 360s and front flips and 360 flips like first run. And I was just like, whoa, you know, like I'd seen good people ride, but like he at the time was at the top of his game.
Oh yeah.
And like he was like one of the dudes, like everybody, like he's like a rock star BMX rider, you know. He's like the sickest dude.
Oh, I still fanboy when I see him at events or anything like that. I saw him the other day at the Supercross and I'm just like, oh,
he's so sick, dude. Yeah, he's the sickest. And like he was so welcoming, and like that was the moment when I was like, holy shit, like, you know, feeling like you made it into like the thing that you're like, I'm accepted into this thing that like, being in Colorado, it's so hard to feel like you're a part of like the BMX industry. And like, I wouldn't even say I made it anywhere close to it at that point, but sitting on a picnic table at his house next to him, I was just like, I'm here with my best friend. I'm sitting here next to Corey Anastasio. This is fucking insane, you know? And so go home to kind of a shit show because I ditched going to junior prom to go to this contest.
A shit show with the lady.
Yeah. So Morgan, the girl I'm dating, and like through high school, like we dated for about 3 years, and I think that was probably the start of the downturn of me like really starting to focus heavily on riding bikes and like more traveling and like stuff like that. And like I don't think it was the fact that I was riding bikes, but you know, you're young and like you're starting to change and like you start seeing stuff a little differently. And I think so I was supposed to graduate the end of my junior year. So right after prom kind of thing. And she convinces me to come back to high school for senior year.
Women are the worst.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I'm young and in love, and she was great. And so, I'm like, sick. Yeah, I'll come back. And I think it was 3 months into my senior year, we split up. And I was just like, fuck, you know, like, but it was great because my parents were like, well, if you don't go back to high school, you have to go get a real job or go to college. And so this is like the hard point in life where you're just like, okay, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, it just got real. So I go back, and then I start really riding my bike because, you know, we break up, and I had never ditched class up until this point. Like I was always like just going to school, like doing my thing, you know, just trying to get it done. So at this point I had like 2 classes, like freaking living on your own and science fiction, like freshman classes, you know, and I'm just like, well, fuck this. I'm just going to ditch every day.
But you already had enough credits to graduate.
Yeah, I was done.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but they were like, yeah, you have to show up or your GPA goes down. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. So just stop caring, basically.
Because college wasn't, and you weren't even interested in
not at all
looking at college. Yeah.
No, and so I think Matt had just moved back to Colorado. I forget where he was living at the time, maybe Oregon or something, or California. And so, we start like getting after it again. We're riding nonstop. And I start like, I remember looking back at that time of how hard I was riding just because I was like in my feelings, you know, I'm bummed out. Like the girl that I loved so much just like broke up with me and my whole life is coming to an end, you know, like I felt like the whole world was collapsing on me. And so,
the misery just brings out the creativity, doesn't it?
I just started hammering, dude.
I gotta take a tangent because it's true. Like that stuff happens, and you start hammering. This guy comes home. And he has a saying. Do you want to tell the viewers?
I mean, I just believe a lot in the when you're down and out, that it brings out the best in you.
What was the saying that you heard?
Oh God,
there's no space.
Oh no, there's no space. Oh, this was a good one. So I did a photo shoot. That's right. And you're going to have to correct me because the wording is kind of hard on this one. But I was doing a photo shoot and it was in a florist. And it was for a movie, but they were filming in this florist. And then there was a couple ladies there that I just started talking to. And one of them asked me if I was dating or single or whatever. And I was just like, no. I work best when I'm heartbroken. I need to be depressed. So I've got the best creativity. And this young lady who went to art school came out with, there's no room for the heart when...
No room for art when you're playing around with your heart.
That was it, yeah.
It's true, though, dude.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's so true. I mean, I think back like to that moment where I was just like, cool, I'm going to just hammer. I'm going to hammer. I don't care if I fall.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to fall. I want to feel something. I hurt. And like just started sending it, dude. And that's like when I started like airing higher and like pedaling faster at shit. I took my brakes off my bike. Like I just didn't care, you know? And like, I have to give her props for that, because like it probably wouldn't have happened the way it did if it weren't for that like heartbreak, you know. So shout out to her.
Shout out to Mo for
breaking
my
his
heart.
Yeah. So like high school is like wrapping up, and like, you know, I'm at that crossroads of like, what do I do? You know, I was like working at my grandpa's store for a little bit, then working at my dad's vacuum store, and then I started working for a local grocery, or not local grocery store, Colorado grocery store called Safeway. And I was like the guy who picked up the carts and like restocked shelves and cashier or whatever. Just like, again, like just working because my parents told me I had to have a job, you know, and so I could pay to go on trips and gas to go to the skate park or whatever. And yeah, high school starts to get to the point of wrapping up. And I remember Christy, my stepmom, being like, well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go to college, or are you going to get a big boy job? Because if you don't do either of those, you can't live here. Damn. You know. And it's like, I'm fortunate, like in the time, it's like those things where you're just like, fuck you, you know, like fuck you. I just want to
ride my bike.
Yeah, you don't understand, but like again, it's like that thing that like kind of pushes you off the cliff. And it was like, I went and figured it out, and I like lied my way into a pretty decent job. So like lied on an application and somehow got a job.
All right, 2 questions.